Oh, welcome to another episode of The Growth Compass. Shout out to our sponsor, Senders. If you want to do cold email outreach and you're struggling with your deliverability, you know how to find me and how to find Senders. But without them, it wouldn't be possible to interview people like Neil. Neil, what's going on today?
This is day 3 back in New Zealand after 77 days on the roads. My body doesn't know where I am or what time it is, but I'm here.
That was an incredible answer. 77 days.
Yeah, that's a normal life for a founder. I'm told to believe.
Wow.
But yes, I like to travel around and visit our largest customers, prospects, and partners around the world. So I spend most of my time on a plane traveling.
Wow, that is so cool. Well, I mean, if you could just, I'd love to hear about where you've been, but if you want to just expand on that, just give a little summary about who you are and also, what you're working on now in your business.
Yeah, well, I'm Neil Cresswell. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a little company called Portainer. And I like to call Portainer an accidental company. It was something that grew out of our open source product, which got quite well adopted. A nice organic fanfare and love from the Docker community in the early days. Around 2020, 2021, we had a VC ask us if we had considered ever trying to turn it into something commercial, which we hadn't at that time, and so gave it a go. And so, what was an open source project became a company, and since then we've been growing this thing, turning it commercial, winning customers, and going through all the trials and tribulations of building a business. So it's
Cool.
been great fun.
Well, if you could, because I understand that your solution has to do with connecting a bunch of containers together, but in a way, if you could explain it in a non-technical fashion, I'm sure there's a number of listeners that would understand at a technical depth, but just so I can have a better conceptual understanding of what you guys offer.
I've always struggled with this when I'm asked what I do. I just say I work in IT and sometimes I fix printers. So I struggle very much describing what we do in non-technical terms, but there is a piece of software technology called containers that's been made popular with a piece of software called Kubernetes. And that software is designed to allow enterprises, cloud service providers, to deploy and manage their software in a cloud native way, in a way that cloud providers would do so. So it's highly resilient, highly redundant, highly scalable, all of the cool stuff you'd expect if you need to deliver a digital service to the world and that service never goes offline. Then you use a product like Kubernetes to do so. It was built by and for cloud providers, so it is complicated as all heck. And unless you have a master's degree in Kubernetes, getting started with that technology is somewhat challenging. You can artificially believe that you've mastered it by reading a few blogs and going through some podcasts and saying, yep, I've mastered 4 or 5 commands, I know what I'm doing. But Kubernetes is super deep and requires relatively specialist skills. And my view on that is a humbug. That's not something that should be normalized. Wherever you have a transformational piece of technology and adoption of that technology is dependent on advanced skills and capabilities, that technology will take a very long time to come mainstream. And so how do I strip away as much complexity as humanly possible and make it available to the masses? And so that's what Portainer does. It takes something incredibly complicated, Kubernetes, and makes it incredibly easy to understand, super intuitive, without compromising on capability. So in a nutshell, was that too deep?
Neil, I thought that was a great job.
Perfect.
So what you're saying is by the end of this conversation, I will not be a master in Kubernetes.
We let non-masters do masterful things.
Wow, I hope that's a tag somewhere. That's
It isn't
extremely
a
cool.
tagline, but it probably should be.
Good. Well, good. Yeah, we can coin it right now. So before we get into, because how long have you been working on this? It says maybe 9 or 10 years about.
Yeah, so the first commit in Portainer was 2016, and basically from 2016 to mid 2020, it was just a side project. It wasn't commercial. It was just this free thing that that me and my co-founder created because we wanted to learn this technology, and we thought it was a cool thing to do. I was running a cloud provider and I wanted to use it as part of my cloud provider service, but really it went commercial mid to late 2020, and 2021 was the first time we actually started really selling it. So if you talk about the overall life of the software, I would say 2016. If you talk about the company and our actual targeted activities, growing and scaling a company, I would say late 2020.
Awesome. So we will. I think a majority of it will be focused on late 2020 to now. Your guys' focus on growing. But I am curious, and I love to do this with guests that have, because everybody comes in with their own story and their own set of perspectives and stuff. Is out of the things that you have done before launching this company, have you launched a company before?
I have been a co-founder of a services company before, and that services company was based in New Zealand and expanded into Asia, and I moved and lived in Singapore for a while. And then I also joined an early startup in Indonesia, which was a cloud provider, and built and scaled that for a number of years as well. Have I ever built a venture-backed company before? No.
Okay, cool. Well, so you've been around in a different form. You've been around the entrepreneurial universe. But something that I like to ask people is, out of your experiences, and they can be anything. Some people talk about things that they first did when they were like 16, landscaping in a neighbor's yard. But I'm curious if you could just pick two experiences that you've had that you feel have specifically influenced the way that you've approached building Portainer.
Okay, so I worked at IBM for, I think it was 13, 14 years. And IBM is an amazing company in that it teaches you how to be a pretty good all-rounder. They teach you management skills, they teach you consulting skills, they teach you, public speaking skills, analytical thinking skills, just everything you could possibly imagine. There is a training course for that, and I think that built me the most amazing foundational knowledge that you could ever build on. There isn't something that I'm asked today that I can't relate back to something I learned at IBM and say, well, that's how IBM did it and taught it.
Wow.
You could probably do worse than just copying them. So that was quite amazing. The second thing was running a cloud service provider where the company's livelihood relied on the digital services that I provided being available basically 100% of the time. If you had downtime, you had hundreds, if not thousands, of customers on the phone screaming at you saying, why are my services down? I'm paying you money for a service. Why is that service not up? And I learned very quickly in there at 3 a.m, when something is crashed, if there is just one person who knows how that piece of software or piece of technology works, you're in big trouble. You want to be able to call as many people as you can. Wake up, get in the car, drive it and fix this thing, help me out. And so I learned a lot at that stage that complexity kills. Complexity is an inverse to platform availability. And if you want to deliver a highly reliable service, take complexity out of the equation. Complexity might be fun for the consultant or engineer to dream up and install. It's a nightmare for operations. And so much of Portainer is based around that whole thesis of get complexity out of the equation. Just get it out. It has no place in modern infrastructure.
Interesting. I think it'd be really cool to focus just for a second on your time at IBM. So when was that you did that? Relative to the different experiences, was it the first job
A long
that you
time
ever
ago.
had?
I think I left IBM in 2007, if I'm not mistaken.
So was it one of the first jobs you ever had? Was it like a mid?
It was my second job, and I joined IBM when I was 19.
Awesome. So were you doing cloud technology, IT related things at IBM?
Well, cloud didn't exist. I started out as a hardware engineer. My background is actually electronics engineering. So I started out as a hardware engineer, and I was fixing printers and monitors and power supplies
Nice.
in a workshop at a bench. I progressed from there to being a field engineer where I carried a pager and ran around like an idiot, basically responding to service calls, fixing things. I moved from there into a server and systems engineer, basically doing the same thing as a hardware engineer, but now for far more critical systems. Moved from there into virtualization, storage, and networking, and became I would say one of New Zealand's leading virtualization consultants, and then spun out from there into my own business, and with some business partners doing consulting for VMware storage and networking. And then after that, I kind of never went back into employment again. Not really.
Nice. And was that the time that you had started the cloud services company that you referenced?
No, that was so. Once I left IBM, I went into my own consulting business,
Yeah.
and that business ran for a number of years, and we exploded out of New Zealand into Asia. When I was in Asia, one of my customers happened to be wanting to start a cloud service provider. And so then when I exited that Singapore business, my customer asked me to join them and help them build and run it. So take it from theoretical concept into reality. There were like 3 employees when I joined that, and I think there were like 80 employees when I left. So
Wow.
yeah, we basically scaled that thing up, and it was one of the first public cloud providers in Indonesia at that stage. It was very, very early.
What, with something that is that early and highly technical, I would assume, what type of growth strategies do you employ?
So I've always been a consultant, and I like to bring people on a journey with me. I don't like to sell to people. I like to help solve people's problems. I have a pretty good innate ability to listen to customer pain points, and in my head in almost real time translate them into a number of different solutions of how I can help them solve their problems. Again, I put that back to some of my IBM experience, where I was exposed to so many
Yeah,
different
there it
technologies. You
is.
can just assemble stuff. I've been described as an inch deep and a mile wide in regards to my skills, and I'm fine with that. So, in regards to the cloud provider, a lot of it was still very much, well, what are you trying to achieve? Are you looking to simply save money and have someone else run your stack for you? Is it that the level of service that your application demands is beyond what your internal team and your internal infrastructure can provide, and so therefore you want to leverage my 3 data center highly available system? What's the reason for wanting to actually move to the cloud, and then help them solution? Yeah, we were trying to offer more than just raw cloud. It was like, well, hang on a second. At that stage, cloud was still quite a new technology too. So how about we actually help you with the migrations, and we actually help you run your applications on the cloud for a period of time until your team come up to speed. So it was more of a managed cloud transition, managed hosting, and then eventual pass back to them to run it themselves once they became competent in how to use it.
Did you find that there was a specific, so the perspective of the question is that I think a really interesting and not talked about enough concept in growth is the idea of scaling at with the wrong customers, because they teach you more about your product and really who your actual customer is. And so throughout the course of time that you were scaling that business from 3 employees to about 80, did you find that there was a particular industry, particular company size, particular problem that a company was running into that specifically made them prepared to take on that service of that company?
I think just because of my career, I naturally gravitate towards enterprises.
Okay.
I am my most comfortable sitting in the office of the CIO or the CTO, having a discussion around their business to IT challenges. And at the same time, I can then jump into a room with a bunch of engineers and talk quite deep into their tech stack and what they're doing and how they're doing it and how we can improve it. That almost always is in the enterprise space. So I've always targeted enterprises, not because necessarily that's where the product fits, but it's where I fit the most, and it's where I feel I can add the most value. And so then I build solutions around my background, behaviors, skills, experiences.
Awesome.
Do I think that I could build a company in the consumer space and into the small business? Probably not. I don't have any experiences to call on to understand the pain points, but I understand the pain points that a very large bank has running their digital services, a telco, an insurance company. I've spoken to hundreds, if not thousands, of them, so I understand their pain points.
It was the example that you gave earlier about waking up at 3 in the morning and getting calls from customers. Was that a
It's a
personal
real thing.
experience of yours?
It's a real thing. I everyone has outages. Anyone who tells you they don't have outages is lying. And so everybody who runs any type of IT service will have an outage. It'll either be a hardware outage, it'll be a power failure, it'll be something. And in my case, I had some incredibly advanced storage. Storage fails and hard drives fail all the time. And when hard drives fail, storage goes offline and systems go offline. And so how do you recover from that? I've also had absolutely intense DDoS attacks where you're simply being attacked by external bad actors trying to take your service offline at a network level. How do you defend against that? So there's a whole bunch of things that you have to always deal with on a day-to-day basis. A lot of it is just noise, bad noise all the time. Some of it is actually service interrupting.
Well,
and you have to understand that.
Yeah, I believe you'd referenced that experience is something that taught you a lot about running that particular type of business. So, if you're able, would you be able to go through that story again, just in a little bit more detail, like context to like what the problem was you were solving, maybe what had happened, and then I guess if there truly was just one individual that fully understood what was happening at that company, but re-leading that company, did it teach you something about what it meant to build that type of company?
Yeah, I'm not a trained business guy. I haven't completed any formal business studies. I'm an engineer. I'm a technical guy, and so I think of things in a technical light almost always. So for me, every problem is a solution waiting to be discovered. I
Love it.
don't live in Excel. I don't live in PowerPoint. In my mind, actually, I live on a whiteboard most of the time to try and think through a problem and how I can solve it. And so when I'm looking to build and scale a business, it's because I'm a technical person, and because almost always I'm selling to technical people. I like to think, well, how would I like to be sold to? How would I like that company to approach me cold? So cold outbound, everyone hates it, but it's necessary. So how do you do that in a way that actually will resonate with the person and not come across like some pushy, aggressive salesperson? How do you do that? And then once you are speaking to somebody, how do you speak in a way that they'd actually appreciate that you're using their time constructively and not just wasting their time? If you're asking for someone for an hour on a Zoom call or an hour conversation, that's an hour that they're not focused on doing their day job. How do we make that hour the most efficient as possible for them, so they are actually seeing a payback on that hour investment in you? So it's more about giving to them as opposed to taking from them. So I'm building any kind of sales approaches, or when I'm thinking about how I'm engaging, it's like, well, how do I add value to the conversation so the customer or the actual potential customer feels like they're getting value from me from the moment that they first talk to me and my company, and they naturally want to buy from me because they feel that they're going to get so much value from the relationship. It's not just transactional.
So, Portainer, we made it. When you guys had, or I guess you and your founding team, when you had decided to take it full time, given that it was already uh, uh, an open source project that people were engaging with, did it need some level of, I don't know, work framing, packaging, something where you could then build a company around it, or was it pretty much ready to go in its open source form?
I can strongly recommend not building a company like this way. You know, actually creating a product and having a product in the market for 4 years, and at that point we had over 1 million active users of the free product, right? To then all of a sudden the next day say, right, we're going to turn this thing into a company.
Yeah.
People will only pay you for something when there is a significant transfer of value. They're not just going to pay you money because you're now saying, pay me money for the thing that you've had for free for 4 years. So you actually then have to go and create an entirely different version of your product with additional features and capabilities that have a delta that justifies the amount of money that you want to charge for. And so to begin with, the delta is very small and you can only charge a small amount of money. And then over time, you build a bigger delta. And so, the moment we said we want to go commercial in late 2020, we had no deltas and we had to very quickly start building deltas in the product.
Interesting.
And ordinarily, if you're starting from a blank piece of paper, you will create two versions of your product from day one and you'll think creatively. We'd already had significant value in the free product. You can't yank value out of open source. That's the fastest way to have the open source community kill you. So once it's in open source, it's there forever. So you have to add layer value on top of it. And that's tricky. It's like, well, actually, this thing's already quite feature rich. What else can we do that people will pay for? You can't just throw features on there for the sake of it that no one wants. They have to actually be features and capabilities that people want and will therefore pay for. So it takes time to create a commercial delta sufficiently big enough that people are willing to pay you money that will actually, justify and scale a business.
Yeah, interesting. So once you guys had built a commercial delta that you guys felt satisfied with approaching other people with as far as selling and stuff, how did you go about acquiring your very first customers?
So we have been incredibly fortunate that we have our open source community behind us, right? And so that community, only a small number of them actually directly pay us money. What they do is create a lot of viral noise about us. They're writing blogs, they're recording videos, they're telling their friends about us, and that creates a lot of organic SEO. And so when a commercial entity is looking for a solution and they type into Google, or more recently in AI, they ask questions, it's been indexed on a lot of content about us. And so we actually organically come to the top of the pile pretty quickly. So every single one of our commercial customers has been a organic inbound. Every one of them. We haven't created a single customer from scratch outbound. They've all been inbound. Every single one of them. And so how do we acquire our existing customers? By simply having the amazing free product and maintaining it and delivering an exceptional level of service, not making our free product a second-class citizen after we had this commercial product. Once we had a commercial version, we kept investing in the free product. We were delivering exceptional levels of service, so people still kept having positive things to say about us, which kept the organic SEO machine going. And so when companies were saying, hey, I've got a problem into Google, Portainer came out at the top of the list. And so people would reach out and say, hey, we've never heard of you before, but everyone's talking about you. Tell me more.
This is a really interesting thing that you're speaking about accidentally. And I like how you prefaced it with, I would not recommend building a business in this way. But I think the reason you said that was from a product perception standpoint. And I think what you're speaking to around having a free version of your product that is still immensely valuable, that leads to organic inbound traffic, is an interesting strategy. I mean,
I would do that again over and over and over and over. What I wouldn't do is start from the free thing and then try and layer on. Right. But if I was creating a company from scratch today, I would absolutely have the freemium model, because it is amazing. It's a way of getting your product in front of the eyeballs of people who will talk about you without any barriers. There are zero paywalls, there's zero registration walls to get our free product. Anybody can get it. You can be completely anonymous, and you can use it, and you can learn, and you can talk about it, and you can fall in love with the product, and you can build your entire knowledge of the platform around our product. And without us even knowing who you are, it's completely anonymous, right? And so you only identify yourself to us when you actually want something from us. So when you want to speak to us about something, when you want some support, you only identify yourself. Yeah. So of our millions of free users, I have no idea who they are. No idea.
Well, I guess you reference it as a freemium model, but I guess from my understanding, I don't know if this is because of the lapse of technical understanding, but for me, it doesn't sound like strictly a freemium model, because it's not, like you said, there's a delta from your free version that people are already using, and then you built something that is strictly away from that. So are there free users that, because my perception of a freemium model is something like, I don't know, HubSpot, where you use it and it gives you, there's paywalls everywhere as far as like feature upgrades and things like that. Is that a similar experience to like what you guys are doing? Because to me, it sounds like you have a separate free product and then a separate commercial product, but I don't know if that's...
So the core of our product is open source, right? And so that's called Portainer CE, Portainer Community Edition. That thing is completely free and open source and available to anybody who feels like sure, running Docker run to get it, right? So that's true, free, open source. We then have a second variant of that product called Portainer Business Edition, which is our commercial closed source version. And we have a freemium version of that and a paid version.
I see.
So you can actually go from open source, which is now 60 to 70% good enough for enterprise needs, it's 100% good enough for a very small business and
Yep.
for a solo developer, but for an enterprise, it's probably 60% good enough. You can go from that to our paid version, but even with our paid version, if you just want to see what it does, you can get our freemium license and you can use it 100% of the features, but just for a small subset of your environment for an unlimited amount of time, by the way, but you can do it. And then once you then want to go wider in your environment, you just pay us a fee, add a license key, and hey presto, the same deployment now runs your entire environment. It
Understood.
makes the actual free to pay journey as seamless as possible.
Gotcha. Thank you for that clarity. That definitely clears things up. Are you familiar? Is this a common structure for companies in the space?
Open core is relatively new. I think open core was coined. It's by a guy called Joseph Jacks. If you haven't spoken to him before, you should try and do so. He's in California. He coined the term open core, and it was a way to try and make open source financially viable in the long run. Yeah, open source is a truly open source company is quite difficult to maintain viably long term. And so open core was a way of saying, well, actually, let's take the best of open source, keep open source, but find a way to actually create a commercially viable version of that you can constantly scale. And so we latched onto that open core concept back in the day, and I think there's a small number of companies who are open core. Many people are still trying to be open source, but there are more and more open core companies now.
And would you say that his name was that individual?
Joseph Jacks.
Joseph, if you're out there, man, let me know. You can get on this podcast. So thank you for that clarity. This has all been so fascinating for me to learn about. I mean, mostly, I guess, just the ramp to understanding more about the space and stuff. So I have a couple more questions for you, and this is I'm excited because this has been really cool so far. So I think it's amazing that a majority of your clients so far have been mostly inbound. I think that's really cool. I mean, it speaks to your value. It's really cool how you've been able to ride that momentum.
And by the way, all global 2000s. So most of our customers are Fortune 500, global 2000, organic inbound. And why? Because we just work. We don't make any outrageous marketing claims. You know, what we say on the website
Right.
is what we do. What we say in a sales conversation is what we do. We don't make any claims. And so we have a very, very high retention rate because there's no audacious claims made during sales that then the customer says, oh my God, the product doesn't do what I thought it would do. And then they churn out a year later. We have very, very high retention rates because it just works.
Right.
So anyway, sorry.
No, totally. And I love it. And I think that's beautiful. What I think is really interesting is that when you are defining what success means for you guys, what is your, because it's a two-part question. The first one is what are your goals for scaling the business? Is it another, to position yourself for an exit? Is it to serve a particular portion of the market? Is it to continue in this niche of a particular type of businesses?
So there are two answers to that. One answer is the commercial answer, and we're very much on the VC triple, double path. Triple your revenue, and then double it from every year thereon. So that's the purely commercial answer. The philosophical answer, and the reason why Portainer existed in the first place, was to enable those to use the technology that would otherwise be unable. I've described Portainer as trying to be Robin Hood. I don't know whether you understand the story of Robin Hood, but yeah, steal from the rich and give to the poor.
Yeah.
The technology that we help manage, Kubernetes, honestly, the only companies that can truly embrace it without a product like us are those who can invest quite significantly in people. And I'm talking about trained, qualified, experienced, and therefore very expensive people, and or lots of additional tooling to help bring their people on the journey. And so you have to be an incredibly well-off organization to be able to justify that, and an organization where IT is seen as a massive center of innovation. For the vast majority of companies, IT is still seen as a cost center, and therefore the CEOs of those companies don't really want to invest too heavily, and so therefore they would slowly fall further behind the market. They would keep getting disrupted by the Airbnbs of the world, right? And so I'm trying to help those type of organizations thrive and survive, or survive and thrive, I suppose is actually the right way around.
Yeah.
By using our software versus being unable to because they simply can't obtain the people they need to run the software without us.
So from the perspective, within the framework of those two definitions, one or the other or both together, I'm curious how you feel about this organic inbound, this majority reliance on SEO. Does that scale to get you where you want to be?
It does if we keep doing a good job. Without a shadow of doubt, there will be a time when we have to start doing outbound, and
Okay.
that's probably very soon. But it's not outbound to engineers. Engineers just don't want to be outbounded to. It's outbounding to an executive who is currently feeling the pain and is lying in bed at night saying there must be a better way. And so we want to be whispering in their ear, yes, there is. It's called Portainer. It's that kind of outbound that we would be looking at, as opposed to trying to outbound to engineers. Engineers I still want to get to through education, through content, through the product. I want them to hear about us from their peers and read about us on technical blogs and newsletters. I want them to hear about us that way and organically learn and experiment. Executives who want to try and initiate change from the top down, yes, we probably need to outbound to those in due course.
Okay. So at the moment then is your focus on continuing to provide value for your open source product? I guess focus on SEO, focus on relationships with places that will publish information about you online. Do you have a significant strategy for social medias as well? Is that the type of content that speaks to your audience, or is it something else when you guys are talking about growth?
I have a relatively weird view of things. If you have to come up with a strategy, it means that you don't actually have a plan of what you're doing. My view is, as long as we're creating content that adds value, that content will propagate itself organically. So I don't want to be writing blogs that are simply me shouting how awesome we are from the rooftops. I want to be writing blogs that help people understand how to do something. I want us creating YouTube videos that teach someone something that they didn't know before they watched the video. So as long as we are adding value in every piece of content we create, we don't necessarily need a strategy to push it out there. It should do so itself. Now, yes, of course, you need to know how are you going to distribute that, through which channels, how are you going to propagate it. There were changes to the LinkedIn algorithm between last year and this year. So how and when you publish your content through the machine, you need to learn how to do that. So of course, that's just education. You need to know that Reddit needs to be handled very differently from LinkedIn. So you definitely don't want to be pushing sales content to Reddit. You want to be pushing educational content to Reddit. So each of the social media channels needs a slightly different approach. But all of them, as long as you're not just trying to push a raw sales message, all of them receive the content and organically propagate it. I mean, I had 35,000 views of my LinkedIn content last week. That's not from me doing anything other than creating content that people want to read, engage with, and then share to their networks, right?
Absolutely.
So my view is, as long as you're adding value, it'll take care of itself.
Well, I have two more questions for you. And like I said, it's just exciting. I mean, it's really awesome, everything that you've been contributing to the conversation. I feel like I've been learning a lot. And I have the first one is, what would you say your biggest challenges currently, right now, today, other than your body not knowing where it is at the moment? And how could you frame it as an opportunity?
The biggest challenge right now is actually the current geopolitical climate and the unknown in the market. I am wanting to continue to invest in expansions. I want to invest in more people in the American market. I want to invest more people in the European market. We're growing into Asia as well. But it's just the great unknown at the moment. And so that's my biggest hurdle right now is, should we invest in people now? Should we wait and see what happens? A lot of companies are waiting to see what happens themselves before making investments. So that right now, hopefully that's a short-term pain point. And so therefore, if you ask me this in 6 weeks' time, it hopefully doesn't exist. But right now, that's my biggest pain point is do I continue my scaling plans, or do I take a wait and see approach? Outside of that, the biggest pain point is we've been around a long time. We've been around since 2016 as a product. We have matured in technical capability significantly over that time. We've continued to invest near endless R&D into the product. A lot of people know us for what we were 2018, 2019, 2020, and in their minds, we haven't moved on, yet we have. So how do we get people who might have used us before to come and have a look again? From a marketing and a brand perspective, that's probably my biggest challenge: is how do I get people to come and have another look at us who might have stopped using us and come back again?
Does that also present itself as an opportunity to you?
We are right now going through a rebranding exercise to change what we look like, to realign our tone of voice, and we're going to use that rebranding exercise. Now, we're not going to change the name.
Yeah.
Because
it's a good name.
Well, also being around since 2016 is a double-edged sword. We're still here. Why? Because we do do what we say.
Yeah.
So being around a long time is also a nice anchor. I mean, there's a lot of people in the cloud native ecosystem who come and go like this. They don't have a viable product and they can't survive, and they flame out and die. So we've been around a while, therefore we're doing something right. But on the flip side of that, we've been around a while, and sometimes we might look like we're the old dog, whereas in fact we've spent millions in R&D, millions and millions, and keep innovating the product from what it was.
So it could be something small, or it could be something large that persists over time for you. But I am curious what inspires you.
Solving problems. I hate the fact that people get tripped up, analysis paralysis. They get stuck in loops and cycles where they don't know how to move forward. Some of our best customers basically got themselves into a right old pickle. They didn't know how to make a decision to move forward. They were too scared to make a decision for it being the wrong decision, and so therefore just didn't make any decision, which was even worse for their company because they weren't moving forward. There is no wrong answer. The only wrong answer is no answer, and therefore doing nothing. Action and activity beats inaction and inactivity, even if what you do is wrong. So I like to help people take that first step on the journey. And I liked you using Portainer. I like to make that first step, the entry point into this technology, as painless as possible, so they can say, actually, it's not that scary. Let's go. Because from an outsider, the technology is quite overwhelming. You know, if you ever go to an event in our space, there's thousands of vendors with products in our space, and it's like, oh my God, which of these thousands of vendors are we going to build our solution around? Which one? It's an incredibly challenging time. There's dozens of network vendors in the Kubernetes space. There's dozens of Kubernetes distros. There's dozens of companies doing security, dozens doing monitoring. How do you choose one? And you have to choose one from 10, 12, 20 different discrete areas. Or you can use our product, which does the same thing as 20 of those products in a far simpler way. So I'm trying to make things easier. So
that's right. Hear that? Go out, move, take action.
Do something.
Awesome, Neil. This has been so awesome. I feel like I've learned so much. It's always been 45 minutes. It flew by. If somebody wants to find you, what's the best way to do so?
Neil at portainer.io, Neil at portainer.io. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Be careful, there are two Neil Creswells, both of us in the IT space, one of which is a guy in the data center space. I'm not him. So careful. I am the Neil Creswell based in Auckland, New Zealand. So if you look on LinkedIn, you'll find me, but otherwise Neil at portainer.io.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. This was an extremely valuable conversation. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity, Blake.
You got it. Have a great day.